Ashtra Travelers, and welcome to the Season 7 premiere of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore podcast. This week, we're coming to you from Angel Share, back in Mondstadt, to talk all about paralogism.
It was like somebody put a gun to your head and you're like, paralogism.
You did it. I'm sure everyone was nervous.
I was so nervous. The paralalala.
First of all, I'm deeply uncomfortable having to say jism a whole bunch.
Thankfully, we don't have to repeat the name too often.
It's just Tales of Teyvat, guys. That's what we do.
Yeah. All right. Are you suspicious? Want to investigate our evidence? Well, come lay siege to our site, talesofteyvat.com, filled with all kinds of Mondstadt madness, dragons, corpses, trials and tribulations.
Oh my god, the trials and tribulations of Evan Buckley. An act in 97 acts.
We didn't even get 2 minutes into this season.
Evan Buckley.
While you're on our site, check out our past seasons and special episodes, and make sure you check out our artist spotlights on every episode. We highlight an artist from the community with a relation to this episode.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, travelers can check us out on Ko-fi, where you can buy us a cup of coffee, or check out our merch store where we have sweatshirts and t-shirts and stickers for all the crazy things that go on in Teyvat. And you can also rate us wherever you listen to podcasts to let travelers know that we are a paralalalala full of fun. Before we get started with our episode and get really deep dived into this, because I had so much fun playing this, but we just wanted to let travelers know we have one quick announcement for the season. For Season 7, Tales of Teyvat will be releasing a new episode every other Wednesday. We plan to use this extra time to give us some more space to keep updated on the plethora of content that is being released by Hoyo every week, it seems, and also to make sure we have some additional time to dedicate to our research as the lore continues to get deeper and darker and wild.
Just like America.
Yes, just like this world we are in.
You know, you said plethora, and I actually thought you were wrong because I say it wrong so often of plethora.
Well, I'm the one who normally says plethora. I corrected myself today.
But I made it plethora in my head. Oh, I have some lore for us. I forgot to even tell you guys, but we'll share it with all of our travelers as well. So we all know how I can't say archipelago and I say archipelago. I finally figured out why.
Oh.
Why?
My mother. She was reading something and she said it completely wrong. And I looked at her and I was like, it's your fucking fault. I'm like, you were the one who's been saying archipelago. Maybe not as pronounced as that, but she says it very much like that.
Don't blame Joan.
So not only can she not say caramel properly.
Oh, does she say caramel?
But she says Carmel. Like,
Carmel, that's right.
It's like, it's not somebody's name.
Now, do you think that you saying plethora and archipelago is somewhat of a paralogism?
Yes. You know what? That was a wonderful segue.
Jism physics.
It is. Because that's what a paralogism is. When you think you're right, but you're actually wrong, but you don't know that. So you're right in your own world. It's like when you are figuring out a mathematic equation and you make a mistake in the beginning, but you do the rest of it right. So your outcome is right based on your wrong thing in the beginning.
Right. Like I read an example of a paralogism, which is I never wash my hands because germs are actually good for you.
Oh.
Like maybe there's certain truths to that in certain situations, but overall, it's not a good idea to not ever wash your hands.
Yeah.
2020 taught me anything.
So that's a paralogism.
A paralogism is my whole life. But before we jump too far into what we think is right and what we think is wrong in Mondstadt, very specifically, I just wanted to review some quick things that you might need to know and some episodes you might want to listen to if you were very confused during this event. I guess it's really an Archon quest, right? Not an event. So if you were confused during this quest line, You might want to listen to some of these other episodes. So, quick recap, we have Albedo. He is made of chalk. We do have an episode on Albedo. I don't remember the number.
Don't worry about it. All the numbers and all the links onto the sites. This way, it's an easy access into those other episodes.
It's episode 41. I just had it pulled up already.
So you have Albedo, who is one of our main protagonists of this event. He is a synthetic human made of chalk. He has a brother named Durin. He's a dragon that lives on Dragonspine, aka a dead beating heart that died many years ago at the hands of Venti and Dvalin. Listen to our Dragonspine episode if you'd like to learn more about that. Albedo also has another evil brother. His name is Susbedo, aka Subject 2. You can listen to our episode on Shadows Amidst Snowstorms, the Susbedo event, as we like to call it, to learn more about him. But know that he tried to kill Albedo, and he failed. On top of that, you also should remember who the Hexen Circle is. They are our beautiful tea party of witches that like to rule over Teyvat to a degree. You might remember Alice, who is Klee's mother and Aunt Alice to Albedo. We have an episode all about Alice and Klee. And you also might remember Rhine-Daughter, aka Gold, aka That Stupid Bitch. We also have an episode about her more recently, and we'll talk about the big drop about this later, but I think we all know she is a shade now.
Not just shady, but a shade.
Mm-hmm.
Also very shady. And, we have Durin, as I mentioned, the dragon, but we also have Mini Durin. If you don't know who Mini Durin is, you might have skipped the Summertime Scales and Tails summer event. We have an episode on that as well. But you basically meet a different version of Durin who is cute and sweet and kind of like a puppy dog.
He's adorable.
Adorable, and becomes besties with Scaramouche.
Which is also adorable.
Yes, hat guy, they're besties, buddies in arms.
An old curmudgeon, mean old man and a cute little puppy. It's just perfect.
Yes. And this event is going to hardcore take place in Mondstadt and with the Knights of Favonius.
So speaking of the Knights of Favonius, if anyone needs a reminder or has never really looked into the structure of the Knights of Favonius, of course we have our missing Grandmaster Varka, who just made his debut recently in Nodcry. He is leading, of course, the expeditionary force that was basically everyone, like all of the knights, except for, the handful that we all know. So they all left Mondstadt to go on this expedition. And then, of course, in his absence, we have our fearless leader, Jean, who is the acting Grandmaster or the deputy master. Now, besides those two fearless leaders that I mentioned, the Knights of Favonius is split up into all of these different teams or companies, as they're called. There are at least 9 of them. So I'll just quickly go through them and drop like one little thing about them. You have the investigation team. That might be the first company or the 5th. That's the one that's headed by Albedo.
Woo!
Used to include a character named Phonia that we're going to talk about. Phonia was the signals officer. They have like the most inventive jobs in the Knights of Favonius. You have the Outriders, which we all know because who is the only member plus the leader of that? Amber.
Woo!
That's also either the 1st or the 5th company, most likely, formerly led by Amber's now missing grandfather. You have the 2nd company. Don't know anything about its role, but it's headed by a character named Note, Naughty, Note, Note, who knows? You have the 3rd company headed by someone named Skiron, Skeiron. You have the 4th company, which is our fabulous reconnaissance team, which is led by Eula and also includes Mika. You have the 5th company, which is probably either the Outriders or the investigation team. You have the 6th company, which does logistics. That is headed by one of the stars of this questline, Hertha. You have the 7th company, which is very interesting because that is temporarily designated as the Combined Arms Company. And that company integrates knights with a range of capabilities into a single combat unit with a balance of ranged and melee firepower. Now, that one, Phonia was recently assigned to, even though she's originally coming from the investigation team. Albedo basically said, I want you to go into the 7th company, which is interesting due to this quest line that we're going to talk about.
And when Albedo talks, you listen.
Of course. Or you don't and you regret it later.
In a fun way.
Fonia, she was recently assigned to the 7th Company after this recent restructuring that they did to the Knights of Favonius when certain members of the Expeditionary Force returned, aka Frederica Gunhilder, Jean's mother. And Fonia also mentions that Frederica will probably eventually become the captain of the 7th Company. Mm-hmm. For anyone who is not aware, Frederica was assigned to the Expeditionary Force, but she was sent back to Dorman Port in Mondstadt, which is an area we have not made it to yet, has not been revealed to us. And she was sent there to do defense around the same time that Varka headed to Nodcry after, a certain point during the quote-unquote expedition that took all the knights out of Mondstadt. So that's the 7th Company. Then you have the 8th Company. That one deals with magic. That's the one, if you want to check out our Lisa episode from a few seasons ago. Lisa, she finished studying at the academia and she came back to Mondstadt. Varka actually wanted her to take the job as captain of the 8th Company. And that displeased some character that we haven't met yet named Nymph, which, wow, great name. So Nymph was like, I don't think someone that's just an academic should enter the Knights at this really high rank. And Kaya was like, okay, well, why don't you have a magic battle to see who's better? But 2 minutes into their magic battle, Lisa was like, you know what? She's adequate. Nymph can have this job. I don't want it. It's too much effort. Yeah. And ever since then, Nymph has been writing letters to Varka saying, please make Lisa the captain. I don't want to do this.
I'm over it. Which, can we also just state for a quick moment that Kaya has so much random pull?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Kaya was like, have a magical duel, Hamilton.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
good luck, Burr.
Is it because he's the quartermaster of the Knights?
He's not anymore.
Oh, he's not. Okay. I don't even really know what a quartermaster does. Is that like who controls the weapons?
I thought you were going to say the weather. I was like, yes. The answer is yes.
It's so on brand, though, that Lisa was just like, ugh, I don't want to have to do any work. Like, she wasn't even bummed about how much work the position was going to have. It was too much work to even battle.
Yeah, it was like, she basically was testing Nymph to make sure she could handle it. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, I'm off the hook.
Yeah.
So that's the 8th Company, the magic one. The 9th Company, that's the cavalry. And everyone in the cavalry, of course, went on that expedition except for Kaya. And that's also the one that used to be captained by D-Luke. And then D-Luke was like, screw this, I quit, I'm leaving. And then Kaya was like, I guess I'll do it. So he took up the reins after his brother quit.
And so Kaya's the quartermaster originally, and now, like Brandon just said, the cavalry captain. And a quartermaster is, according to Google, a military officer responsible for providing quarters, rations, clothing, and other supplies.
Okay, so like housing and food and stuff.
He was the bitch of the Knights.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense because he was the one that was like doing stuff with the Goth Hotel at one point.
Mm-hmm. So without a spoiler, though, since we're talking about the cavalry and we've never seen an actual like horse, which would be typically of a cavalry, do we actually get to see or hear of a horse when we finally go to Nodcry and talk to Varka?
No, of course not.
Yeah. We're going to find out that the cavalry is like chipmunks.
Sumpter beasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's Timmy's pigeons.
The pigeons and the boar.
Yeah, like I've seen it like a unicorn creature, right? Like that unicorn, like seahorse creature before I've seen an actual horse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Make it make sense. I've seen dragons.
Yeah.
Many dragons. I've seen AI dragons.
We've seen cows on bottles of milk.
But no cows.
But no cows.
I've seen so many goats.
Yeah.
So many goats.
Yeah.
I've seen those little snaky things that like go into the sand. Like, why have I seen those? Like an eel almost.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a horse.
It'd be funny if they did like wild horses.
Yes.
Before they showed like, knights on horses.
Yeah, because we have deer now. We have those beautiful deer over in Nodcry too. And we had them over in Chenyu Vale too. We've gotten very close, but just not in Mondstadt. The only place that has a cavalry. Do we have no animals for the cavalry?
I could see Varka drunkenly letting the horses free.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe a bunch of them went to Dorman Port. with Frederica.
That's true. There could be horses at the port, which makes no sense.
They let them go and they all know where to go back home, and it's all at Dormanport. If Dormanport doesn't open up with a bunch of horses, I'm gonna riot.
Just swimming in the bay.
It's just Spirit, the horse movie.
Mm-hmm.
My Little Pony everywhere.
Speaking of Frederica, the only other group I was going to bring up, of course, is the Church of Favonius, because even though that is a separate entity, it is managed by the Knights, which Jean has in a voice line. So Jean is actually like kind of aware of her sister's work ethic, Barbara. And it was just a reminder, because of course the Church of Favonius is actually led by Seamus Pegg, who is on the expedition team. You know, it's a funny reminder that Jean and Barbara are Nepo babies because their parents run Mondstadt, basically.
And their divorced parents are supposedly out on this expedition together, which is hilarious.
I know, there must be so much drama.
That's why Varka brought him.
I envision Frederica using Varka to make Seamus jealous. And there's drama around it.
Oh, I love that.
Because you could just see Seamus getting all flustered,
Wait, we've seen him drunk before. He gets very red in the face.
Yeah, you see him blushing and running off to his tent.
Yes.
Clutching his rosary.
I was like, his pearls?
Yeah.
Is he clutching his pearls over there?
Yeah.
He's praying to Venti, who's drunk at the bar, and he's like, Barbados, my ex is flirting with the head of the fucking knight, and Venti's like,
and he's way younger than you.
So much younger. So much younger. But honestly, I feel like that was such an important recap because we meet a lot of these people for the first time in here. And this is the first time we really hear about the restructuring of the Knights as well as in this quest. So before we jump into the quest, I just need to know, what were your thoughts when the trailer dropped?
I remember you, Feeny, were like, oh my God, Albedo is turning evil.
And I just got a tattoo.
I remember being like, no, he's not. It's all a setup and they're going to pretend like he's evil. But then Albedo or Kaya is going to turn around and be like, gotcha. We set all of this up just to catch a bad guy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm happy to say I was right.
I'm honestly very happy to say you were right as well.
But it was fun for a moment, though, to think that maybe you were wrong.
Yes.
And that trailer was pushing it. When you look at it out of once you've done the quest and you see where they cherry picked the little pieces to kind of put them together for the trailer, you're like, those have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
But it makes he looks so guilty.
Well, here's the thing I love about this game is they did what I kind of figured they would do, but then what they always put a twist on it, because I was not expecting Durin necessarily to be involved, but I was definitely not expecting, what happens to Mini Durin coming back from a summer event and becoming more of the canonized. I mean, it's all canon, but becoming more of the main story involved, because the Simulanka where we first meet Mini Durin, that was a summer event, right? And so this is an interlude, but it's a part of the Archon quest line. So this is one of the things that everyone plays. And I was not expecting Mini Durin to become a main character. And this quest also sets up a big thing that happens in Act 4 of Nodcry that just came out, which involves Albedo and Durin. So this is a really important quest. And I was not expecting that. I was not expecting the reveal about gold and what's going on there. And I wasn't expecting a freaking battle over all of Mondstadt. So they definitely surprised me, even though I knew the setup in the trailer was going to be, a red herring or whatever you call it.
Oh, yeah. What about you, Tiff? What did you think?
Like I said, I was very kind of oh my God, did they actually make him? I believed it. I fell for it. I fall for most things, though. I don't really dig too deep into a lot of the trailers until I'm doing the actual quest, just because I don't want to figure it out beforehand, kind of a thing.
Okay.
I'm like that with movies too. I want to go into it blind. But I was actually a little bit afraid that he was going to turn evil, because I was afraid what that would do to you.
I'm not having a good time, so I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't know mentally where I'd be right now.
Yeah. One thing that I think kind of is almost annoying is that the trailer includes other parts of the
Yes.
other things that were happening or getting released. And I almost was like, this is an Archon quest. Why are you putting in Escoffier into it? Like,
Yeah, I think you get to like the head part of the Mondstadt of what's going on in Mondstadt in the trailer, and then it's like Nouvelette's been stabbed. And you're
yeah.
like, what? Wait, what? Why
What
does
does that
Yeah.
have to do with Mondstadt?
Is he here? Is
I
he
forgot
with
they
us?
did that.
Yeah.
Is Nouvelet in Mondstadt? Like that? What is happening?
Didn't they do that? I think they did that with the new Not Cry release too.
Yes.
I want them to have their own. Like, you can do it. It's okay. Give everybody their own video.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to say that when the flagship photo for this arrived, and they're like, "Oh, Friday we're gonna do our live stream," and it was Albedo and Venti and Kaya and Jean, like my whole body, it got tingly. Like I was like, "Oh," I was like, "This is what I wanted." Like I felt like it like revitalized something in me, and then I was like, "Oh my God, is Albedo a murderer? Are you joking?" Like I was like shitting myself. I was like, "Are we kidding?" Like he's evil, he's a murderer. I just got an alchemist tattoo. Like I can't handle this. Why? Why? And then in the way that the editing was done in the trailer, it also kind of made it seem like Albedo was going to be a chess piece in the boss battle.
It did.
I was very lost, very unhappy. So I went from like this real high to the what the fuck? And I'm better now. But for those of you who didn't play the event or may have been confused by the event, we're going to walk through the quest. We're going to walk through it, and everything starts where everything should start, at Windbloom. And we show up to Windbloom, and Paimon, of course we show up for Windbloom first off. We only show up for the parties. Parties and tragedies.
Yeah, basically. Paimon just like has all of these events in her calendar.
Yeah.
She's like, it's that time again.
She just pulls out her little like planner, and she's like, I think Windbloom is starting this week. We should probably head back.
You hear like Juice by Lizzo playing and her little magic bag. You're like, what was that? She's like, nothing.
You don't need to know what I do when you go to bed, Traveler, on your fake pillows. So when we get there, we're all excited, and things are really weird. And honestly, the biggest two things that are weird is that Donna is no longer in love with Dilu.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she kind of has a thing for Kaya, which is just so fucked on so many levels.
And Beatrice is suddenly dumping Quinn.
And Miles says that he's been sleepwalking from stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Catherine's basically like, yeah, things are really fucking weird.
It was definitely some good groundwork that they were laying, because at first glance, this should not really have anything to do with, Albedo when you find out he's on trial.
Yeah.
So they are like sort of planting these seeds of like, oh, something's going on with multiple people around Mondstadt.
And it starts with like Gossip Queen Catherine, which is the best for me.
Yeah. I was kind of like, what's going on there? You're like really not just giving us commissions, you're giving us some tea there too.
I mean, she stands there 24/7.
Because when we get there, we're like, well, it's Windbloom, so I'm sure you don't have any commissions for us. And she's like, well, no, but girl, there are some things going on in this town right now.
And isn't there which hangout is it that we get Beatrice and Quinn together?
Oh, is it Noelle's? I think it's
think it's
Noelle's.
It's Noelle's, yes, yeah. So after all that we did, then all of a sudden Beatrice is like, nah.
Yeah.
I'm over you. So Kaya walks over to Donna at this point, and he's like, Donna, I'm so flattered that you like me, but why? And then she like explains why, and he's kind of like, okay, I gotta go. Which I was like,
Yeah.
Kaya, like, fuck, Jesus, Kaya, like, how are you the most eligible bachelor in this town? And he actually walks over to us, and he's like, hey, thank God you guys are here. We need to go to the headquarters of the Knights right now. And you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah. He's like, Jean needs us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, anything for Jean, as long as it's not Varka.
Well, Kaya doesn't like to keep her waiting.
Mm-hmm. He's like, she's holding all of my eye patches hostage in her bedside drawer. We need to go.
Things are just a little different between them after he flirted with her at the end of Sumulaka.
Yeah.
So we get to the Knights headquarters, and we're introduced to two captains, Note and Skyren, who we've never met before. I'm like, who the fuck are
Yes.
these two captains?
Yeah.
Like, thank God Brandon ran that down because I was confused when I did the event.
Yeah, we don't know how to pronounce these because we played this when Kaya's voice was still not being voiced.
I know I
Mhm.
miss Josie and Coy and a lot of other people, but mostly them.
So however you pronounce their names, Note and Skyrin, Skirin, there again, that is captain of the second company and captain of the third company.
Mhm.
But they don't say anything about the companies. And I think it's funny because there's a moment where they're standing next to Eula and Kaya. They both have like the same outfit, sort of similar hair. Like they just look
Yeah.
very
PC model.
ordinary standing next to Eula and Kaya.
Yeah.
Who is also there, which is great. So we learned that there's a trial going on in Mondstadt, and that trials actually aren't very common in Mondstadt, and that they haven't had one in a while. And Jean kind of like looks off as she says that, which makes me curious if the last trial had in Mondstadt was that of Erok, who is
yeah.
our traitor from the inside who
Mm.
fucked things up prior to the manga with Diluc's dad. He's the reason that Diluc left the Knights, and we do know that later on Jean and Lisa discovered all of his errors and that they were able to get rid of him from the Knights, despite the fact that he does have some loyal followers still within the Knights.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious if that's it. There's no confirmation or anything like that. But we do learn that when there's a trial going on in Mondstadt, you can either be tried by the Knights or by the church or by both parties if they find it necessary. And we find out that there is a trial going on featuring Albedo. And it is such a severe situation that both Dahlia, who is the deacon of the church and the herald of Barbados, as well as Jean, are in charge of overseeing this court case, which I will say, having Jean up there does feel a little conflict of interest to me.
Because they're in the Knights together.
Yeah, like that's your subordinate, that's his boss.
Yeah, but I guess that like when you are the Millith of Mondstadt,
Mm.
it's kind of what happens. I also thought it was interesting too that they were like, this is going to be a closed door. We're not letting the public know about this.
Yes, because they didn't want, the whole idea was that if Albedo was found innocent and the public was allowed in on it, that they might be tainted in the way that they see one of the captains in the Knights. And they didn't want that to happen. So this is when we find out Albedo's on trial, and Ether or Lumine, whoever you play as, goes in their head, Albedo, what did you do? And I was like, oh my god, all the shippers, the Traveler X Albedo shippers are going wild right now. Like, this is so piney. So we learn now Beto's on trial for murder and disposing human remains unethically, which, okay, and that they don't know the identities of the victims. So we head to court, and the defense, the person defending Albedo, is fucking Kaya, which again, I was like, really, guys?
Mm-hmm.
This is a ship.
Yeah, and they could also be, in some people's headcanons, like brothers, sort of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best friends, brothers, co-workers. Like, minimally, these two get along and have probably had drinks together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they co-raise Klee together, basically.
And you know what? Maybe that's why Albedo was like, I'll have my brother. But really, he should have gotten a better attorney because Kaya was not a good one.
No, he couldn't flirt with Jean or Hertha,
Yeah.
so it didn't really
It was-
help.
Yeah.
And the prosecution is Hertha, who Brandon mentioned earlier. She's the person that you go to when you're trying to get your reputation up in Mondstadt. So she's another captain within the Knights.
And she was prepared.
She was much more prepared than Kaya was,
Mm-hmm.
which we've later find out that we're not the only ones who noticed that. But that's besides the point for now. So the first charge that she brings up is that at the southeast city gates, somebody saw Albedo dumping what looked like a human body. Ooh.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun.
And this is Beatrice. So now we know why she's breaking up with Quinn, because she's #traumatized. So Albedo's like, I was working in my office that night writing this like huge research report. And Kaya's like, yeah, it's true. I saw the report the next day. And Hertha is very SpongeBob meme about it and is like, was anyone with you when you wrote it?
Is that how she talks?
No, she was voiced. So when I did it, she was voiced.
No, but I think that you should do that impression of her for the rest of the episode.
Oh no. And of course, nobody was with him. So he doesn't doesn't really have a clear alibi, but they never found a body. However, near the crime scene, they did find a man's shoe and a piece of clothing. But it is also noted at this point that nobody has been reported missing in Mondstadt.
Cut to Sucrose looking horrified.
Yes, she has killed everyone.
But while you're also learning of this whole thing, they show Beatrice like this like reenactment of her like seeing it, and she makes this face that is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Like eyes bugged, and it's like it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite Beatrice.
You could tell the animators were in.
Yeah. She was shook.
So after we find all this out, Dahlia goes, "This isn't looking good." And that immediately made me not like Dahlia.
Oh, really?
I was like, stop being snarky, Dahlia. Like, fuck off. Anyway.
Now, do we think Dahlia was in on the weird bait and switch thing happening already?
I don't think the church was in on it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I guess we don't. I guess for all, like, we don't realize this yet, but we later find out that Dahlia is like Venti's personal gossip queen.
Yes, the herald to Barbatos.
Yeah. Which I'm like, why not just go ask Catherine? But I guess
Yeah.
Dahlia is a like.
Because that bitch would tell everybody.
Yeah, she's gossip
Yeah, that's
queen.
true. That's true. Dahlia is a little more secretive with his knowledge.
He's too busy shoving popcorn in his face.
Oh my God.
That idol.
Popcorn noise that Dahlia
That idol
makes.
gets me. I can't.
It is so, yeah, it's so loud. It is so loud. Yeah, I hate it too. And I like Dahlia as a character, but that noise,
So Albedo kind of looks up at Hertha and is like, yeah, no, I know murder. No murder here. No. And Hertha and Albedo do come to this agreement at this point that there's no motive in the situation. This is the only time the two of them will agree on anything the entire trial. Their second charge then becomes that Albedo was seen dumping a body between Dragonspine and the Dawn Winery by none other than D-Luke, who just so happened to be going for a stroll at 3:40 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all know that's because he's the Dark Knight hero.
Oh, which Kaya makes sure to take a jab at him, which is like, why were you walking so late, Master D-Luke?
Mm-hmm.
doesn't D-Luke hide bodies? Like, didn't D-Luke hide a body in the manga?
Yeah.
Yes.
Was he like, oh shit, someone found one of my, oh wait, no, that's someone else's body.
That's someone else's. And if you don't remember that early on in the story with D-Luke and the Dark Knight hero, we find like everybody's all in a tizzy over the Dark Knight hero comes out every night and like makes things better and nobody knows who it is. And we find out it's D-Luke. So
He's Batman.
he's always out and about in the middle of the night. Him and Rosario are like fighting shit in the middle of the night.
Yes, and in the manga, it's implied that he and his servants at the Dawn Winery dispose of someone's body. Like wasn't it one of Dottoro's henchmen? They
Yeah.
because Dottore kills him in D-Luke's basement, and they're like, we're just gonna put that in one of the wine barrels and get rid of it.
Which I'm like, I hope no one fermented it.
Yeah, seriously. That real big batch of wine that everybody loves, it's because it's human.
Yeah, and everyone thinks Adeline is a cannibal. Like all the other maids at the winery think that she's a cannibal. Like there's a lot of lore at the Dawn Winery, guys.
Yeah.
It's really wild. But so Kaya's like, why were you out so late, bro? And D-Luke's like, I live here. I can do what I want. Which is really not a great alibi either. But we find out that D-Luke found some teeth and a human femur after Albedo left. And they basically suggest that Albedo is using some sort of alchemy to decompose the body faster.
Mhm.
In which case, Sucrose speaks up and she's like, no, we were in the library together. Which I was like, oh, you poor little crush. Like, and you want to help so bad. There's no way you were at the library at 3:40 in the morning. And Hertha's like, did you fall asleep? And Sucrose just gets quiet. And Albedo's like, yes, she did fall asleep shortly after midnight.
Poor Sucrose, at least she tried.
So then their third piece of evidence they bring up is these correspondences that they found that are Albedo's. They say that the handwriting matches his handwriting. And basically in these correspondences, he's discussing using death to create life through the process of putrefaction and refinement. The letter also ends up mentioning the locations that both Beatrice and D-Luke mentioned seeing bodies. And that also, matches. So they find Albedo guilty. But Dahlia and Jean are still like, there's a lot of no answers here still. Like, who are the victims and how was the alchemy used?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they know that their whole thing with him using alchemy with it is that both eyewitnesses saw this like glow of gold light as if they opened up the suitcase in Pulp Fiction and it was just like, oh.
Yeah, and there's the question of if that gold light is alchemy or his geovision.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were like, oh, he probably used his geovision to dig the holes, which I was like, what a fun way to use your geovision. I've never thought of that before.
Now, if you had to use your geovision to dig a hole, would you actually try to get a rock that's really far down and have it pull up and make the hole? Or would you try and find little rocks to just move out of the way?
I feel like I'd have to know about the rock to move the rock. So if I don't know about the boulder, like, I'm fucked.
I also want you to know that is my train of thought. I was like, how would you use how would you
Can't
use
you just
that?
create your own rock and
Yeah,
use it
could
to
you just make a
dig the
shovel?
dirt out?
Yeah.
Well, also, like, is dirt not geo? Like, can't he just move the dirt with his vision then? Like,
Well, geo always makes me think of geology, which is rocks, and dirt's not rock. I don't know.
dirt is like fragment of rock, isn't
Is
it?
it?
I don't know.
No.
I'm definitely
I think that you're
looking
thinking
that
of
up.
sand.
Well, sand is glass.
Yeah, but sand's also ground up stuff.
I want to let you guys know that in a fabulous episode of 911, there was a man buried in the sand and lightning struck him and it turned to glass around him. And now I will never let anyone bury me in sand again.
but
All
before, I used to love being buried in sand.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to the beach, you like
Especially when
pretend to
the
be a
tide
mermaid.
would come in and you'd get really close to you.
Yeah. And I'd be like, this is it. Finally.
It's like that guy in Fontaine.
Yes.
Yes, the chicken guy.
Is his name Pierre? I think it's Pierre. I always give him a different name.
I forget his name.
I don't know.
He was one of the first things I saw when I went to Fontaine was a head in the sand.
I thought it was like George.
Did I make him overly French?
You might have, but also George might be wrong.
It was Henri.
Henri.
Yeah,
Henry,
it just came to me.
George, close.
Yeah.
Pierre, close.
Weirdo guy with his head in the sand with a chicken next to him and crabs going, ooh, I'm going to eat this. It's just Fontaine was ridiculous.
The mafia. So, as the trial concludes and people start to clear, Rosaria comes up to us and she's like, well, this took a turn for the worse.
Oh my god! And Paimon was like, Rosaria, like, gets completely spooked by Rosaria.
As she should be.
I also thought this was interesting because if you guys remember during the Suspedo event, or I don't know if it was the Suspedo event or Albedo's quest, like his character story, because I did them at the same time. Rosaria has always been sus of Albedo, so I find it interesting that she's like, well, shit, didn't see that one coming. And she tells us that we need to go to Star Snatch, where there's a guest waiting for us. And she does say, time is like the wind. It waits for no one.
That was deep.
I was like, does Rosaria know Venti's identity? Like, that was my first thought with that quote. So who knows?
Oh, that is interesting.
Right? So we head up to Star Snatch and we find out that Dahlia is the Herald of Barbados and him and Venti are both there. And Paimon is like super surprised that Venti is in the loop on what's happening. And she goes, that's surprisingly Archon-like of you.
Shade.
And basically she's saying that in regards to the fact that she knows Albedo's secret and that he's made a chalk. And he also says something that is counter to the Albedo lore that we've heard prior. And it worries me a little bit because I'm like, why are they doing this? He says that both Gold and Alice brought Albedo to Mondstadt. And he says something along the lines of like, when those two are in town, no one can slack off. But we've always been under the impression that Gold found the heart of Naberius, chomped down on it apparently, left Albedo with Alice, and then Alice eventually left Albedo and Cleet in Mondstadt, which like hashtag abandonment issues, Albedo. But I just thought that was interesting that it kind of was a counter to what we know. I don't know if that's just a writing mishap.
Or did it happen so close together that it's actually, like it sounds separate, but it really was all like in the same kind of like time frame?
What's the problem with it? You thought that
only Alice left him in Mondstadt when Venti is suggesting that Alice and Gold were both there.
In her trauma, he was abandoned twice, but the way Venti says it, he was abandoned once by two people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I just assumed that Gold sent him along like maybe like just shortly before she disappeared.
Or maybe Gold showed up when Alice like dropped him off. I don't know. And he never saw her, which is possible too. We know that Alice specifically is also very sneaky like that, and I'm sure Gold is as well. But regardless of my canon issues, We do agree to help Venti as we continue to see what's going on with Albedo and the whole situation with the trial and the murders. And he does return to us the Dodoco communication device that we've used in prior summer events.
Which is funny because later we find out he can just use the wind as a walkie-talkie.
So yeah, why do I need this fake bomb?
Maybe it's so Alice can listen it.
Maybe.
Yeah, because there is a wrong number mishap later on too. So it maybe it's so this way they could talk to one another, not just to Venti.
Yeah, Venti's very intertwined with the Hexen Circle in this quest line.
Or he just thinks it's funny that they're walking around talking into a fucking bomb. He would do something just for the funds, for the lols.
Yeah, that's true.
So at this point, we return to Mondstadt, where we end up following up with Jean, Kaya, Eula, and Skyrim. Kaya tells us that he's going to be putting an appeal forward, and he's hoping that Albedo accepts the appeal, although he feels like Albedo's been acting not necessarily himself, and they do ask us to help investigate the situation, which gives us access to the second floor of the Knights of Favonia's headquarters and Albedo's lab. Which is permanently open.
Which you were trying to get into for years.
I didn't even know the lab was there.
But just trying to get up on the second floor.
Yeah, and I succeeded, mind you.
You have a whole TikTok about it. It was pretty awesome.
I do. And then I broke into the second floor of the Jade Chamber as well. But anyway, we investigate. We have to do all that thought bubble bullshit that they started doing in Fontaine. And we do find a letter that says it's from an old and accomplished alchemist, but we don't know who. Which, like, the only person I could think of was maybe Alice. Like, I don't think Gold would sign a letter like that to him.
Well, I mean, she might, though, to hide the identity, but I think that there could just, I mean, he's not the first alchemist, so there had to have been somebody else there. I mean, there had to have been somebody, right?
They never bring up other alchemists at the Knights. I mean, he got there and immediately became the head alchemist.
But they've always had crafting benches everywhere.
Yeah, but there's no alchemists in Leeway.
Like, who was Timaeus' boss before?
I don't know if Timaeus was into alchemy before Albedo, at least in my headcanon.
Oh, you think he brought, like, the whole thing to popularity?
I think that he brought alchemy to Mondstadt. I think Lisa might have known alchemy prior to, and maybe Mona as well. And we know Alice also is an alchemist.
I mean, there could have been some in Conria.
True.
Because that's like the nation of alchemy, sort of.
But anyway, the little things I harp on. While we're investigating, we also find a map, and it marks 3 locations. And 2 of those locations are the ones mentioned during the trial, where Diluc and Beatrice saw bodies. But the third one is up on Dragonspine.
And Amanda was like, at last, I get to go back to Dragonspine.
Yes, I was my home. So, as we're about to head out, we get a phone call on the Dodoco from Venti, and we tell him what we found, and then we see Miles kind of like spying on us. Now, if you remember, Miles is the knight we saw earlier who is sleepwalking due to stress, and we're kind of like, whatever you heard, you didn't hear it. And Miles is like, okay. And he walks away.
We're like, are you listening to us? And he's like, no, not at all.
Which, like, how else are you supposed to answer that? Like, yes. 100% have been eavesdropping for at least 12 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
So we leave Miles and we head to Dragonspine to the 3rd location, where we do find a hole that seems big enough for a human body to be buried in, but there's no body there. We also find it very interesting because at the other sites, the body hole seems to be very hidden, where in this case it's
body hole.
The body adi hole is very like pronounced here. It doesn't seem like anyone tried to hide it, and it's a little sus to us. So we head back to Mondstadt, where we fill in Jean on what's going on, and she tells us that Albedo's getting ready for retrial, that he did accept it, and that they've sent their evidence to forensics. Who is the forensics team?
Is that the 5th company?
Yeah, like, is it Sucrose? Like, I'm so confused on who, because the people who should be the forensics team in my head are Albedo and Sucrose. So
I know. Well, Sucrose isn't even in real night, sadly. Like, even though she's Albedo's assistant, so she works for the investigation team, I guess, but she's not considered a knight. She's like Noelle, like a knight wannabe.
So I don't know who the forensics team is. Is it Bones? Is like Temperance Brennan over there running it? Am I gonna see Seeley Booth soon, aka David Francis? Like, I don't know.
It would have to be the investigation team, right? So it's probably Albedo.
Yeah.
Albedo's looking at the
think
bone,
so.
going, "That's not familiar."
Like when they go to show it off in trial, it's Rosaria. Like, is she somehow actually in there too? And they're just like, no, but everybody was busy, so she's just gonna tell us what the forensics said. Maybe she's using her vampire powers.
I don't know, man, because she's with the church too. You know, like, is the church the forensics team? I don't. The church is secretly Dexter.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wait, doesn't Sucrose carry bones in her pocket
Yes.
or something?
Yes, she does.
Yes.
It probably is Sucrose, even though she's not a knight. She probably does all that for them.
Just the scientist in the corner.
Yeah.
Which, if it is Sucrose, it's a true Dexter moment. But whatever. We also find out that Miles was spying on our conversation here with Jean too, which I'm like, Miles, mind your business.
Mm-hmm.
Cut it out, Miles.
Yeah.
Miles is like, sorry.
Or at least get better at it.
I just like the idea of him being like, ha ha ha.
He runs away on his tiptoes. Giggling.
Yeah.
So at this point, we head to the second trial, where we find out that they also sent evidence to the church's medical team, which might be the forensics team, and that they are human, though they aren't. And they note that there are actually a few missing people in Mondstadt after all. We were wrong in trial 1. But the people who are missing are people who are kind of like hermits or secluded and don't have family, and they're not people that would get reported missing. One of them happens to be this guy, Hanselman, and they do think that the remains of one of the items must be his, because he had no family and he's been missing for a while, and it was a male shoe and blah, 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 blah. Hertha thinks that Albedo is doing this all for research purposes and continues to call Albedo vile, in which case I almost threw hands.
And she's like, and I don't mean it like the person named Vile.
No,
That's
I
in
love
Mondstadt.
her. So then Donna ends up testifying, and she says that she saw Albedo as well when D-Luke saw him burying the body and whatever. And we find out that this is why Donna is no longer crushing on D-Luke, because she's like, if I just had never liked D-Luke, I would have never been there. So I was like, so you're stalking him at 3:40 in the morning.
Yep.
Like, great. We also know she has a crush on the Dark Knight hero as well, and that she's torn between the two. So I was like, is this like her finding the truth?
Yeah. Donna is a dumb bitch.
Donna is crazy. It's really interesting how deep the NPC lore in Mondstadt is.
Yeah.
So Jean then presents the map, and Albedo's like, yeah, that map's mine. And Kaya kind of leans over and is like, bro, stop. You're making it sound like you did it. And then Albedo kind of turns to everyone. He's like, I didn't kill anyone. I was like, thank you, Albedo. Hertha is just so over him. And Albedo ends up talking to us, and he's like, since you found the map, and I know you must have traveled to the third location, traveler, what do you think? And so we do all the stupid deduction cloud stuff again, and we basically say that the third hole was different, but we don't think it's the same. And Hertha's like, boo, fuck you, it's Albedo. And I'm like, okay, calm down. So Albedo actually starts to talk about the events of Suspedo, and he talks about the fact that there was an imposter once on Dragonspine that tried to kill him, and he does look to Eula and is like, you were there. And he says, yeah, I actually killed the imposter and I buried the body at the third location. And Eula's like, huh, yeah, like I saw that imposter, but I don't think I saw the murder. It must have happened, when Bennett, Traveler, Amber, and I left. And then Albedo mic drops and he's like, I never said that the thing I killed was a person. And you're like, what? Sir, like we're not shocked, but everyone else is like, what? Yeah. And then D-Luke mic drops immediately after and is like, I see. I then withdraw my testimony. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Like, how did this do anything?
And then, third mic drop, they bring in a second Hertha.
You're like, wait, who? You're the same person.
There's a sus Hertha?
Yeah, like that again. Surtha. Surtha. So as this other Hertha comes in, Albedo starts to explain the history of Durin and Dragonspine very quickly, saying that the imposter he killed was an alchemical creation that came from Durin's tummy. And also makes sure to mention that Durin's heart is still beating. And Hertha 1 is like, I'm fucking real, damn it. But then we accuse both Herthas of being fake. And the new Hertha is like, yo, let's settle this once and for all. I have a long ass scar on my body, yada yada. And the knights who are with me that day will know what that scar is. And Eula knows, and Hertha's like, shut up, let someone else answer. And,
and Amber's like, wait, how do you know?
How do you know?
So Hertha number 2 looks to Miles, and he doesn't remember. And Hertha number 2 pulls up her arm and shows out this badass scar. And she's like, you were there, Miles. You should remember. And other Hertha, Hertha number 1, lawyer Hertha, show me the scar. In which her original Hertha is like, fuck, we've been caught. And all of a sudden, several other people pull out knives and hold it against the knights to cover fake Hertha, aka lawyer Hertha, as other people start to break in. And basically all hell starts to break loose. And we find out that this whole trial was a setup to suss out these quote-unquote dragon spine creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I was duped. Because I was like, is this the equivalent of I woke up and it was a dream? Like, what just happened?
I will say, so I think what we find out in this moment, correct me if I'm wrong, is that some of the citizens of Mondstadt have been copied and turned into, like, it's like these monsters like taking on their appearance, but then other members of Mondstadt have just been brainwashed, basically. So like both things are happening together.
Yeah.
That part was a little confusing at first because I was like, wait, are they going to kill all these people? Or like, where are the originals?
Yeah.
You know, where, like, are these all pod people, or or did they stash their bodies somewhere else, or like some of them are real and some of them are not?
And we're also like, who is real? And we're kind of looking at everyone like, you all could be sus. I don't know.
That's definitely the scariest part about it, is like when you don't know if anyone is real or not.
It's a
like, are
nightmare.
you a Cylon?
Am I? I don't know.
So this is when we find out that all hell has broken loose in all of Mondstadt. There are monsters everywhere. And Albedo notes to us that basically Durin's life force has created all this drama and these monsters, and what Brandon just noted. But that the Knights have been monitoring the situation for quite a while, and they were totally prepared for the attack. We then are trying to make our way over to Venti. We are warned by some of the other knights that some people are acting strange and to watch out. And we find Venti, who at first is like, fuck, people. And he's like, don't hurt me. I'm just a bard. And then when he sees it's us, he's like, shit, cool. What up? Which also suggests that Albedo knows Venti's true identity at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Paimon is surprised about, and the Traveler does say to Paimon, people can make friends while we're not around, Paimon.
That seems convenient.
Yeah, right? Like, why is it happening off screen?
And then Albedo pulls out the key to the hibernation chamber of your spaceship.
Like, how did you get one too? Why don't I have one? So Venti notes that he's very surprised to find out how evolved the dragon spine monsters are. And Albedo's like, it's all in the blood. I don't know what to tell you. Durin's blood. Yes. And Albedo then turns to us while talking to Venti and is like, BT dubs, I totally did bury bodies. And we're like, what? And he's like, basically, I noticed that people were starting to come to Dragonspine, and when they returned from Dragonspine, they just weren't right. And so they found all the stuff that Brandon explained earlier. The monsters were pretending to be these people, while some people were just under the influence of the Durin juice. But others had
not the Durin juice.
Durin juice,
His tummy juice,
his Kool-Aid. But other people had been killed by the monsters and then replaced.
No, wait. Do you think that one of Albedo's victims is it Joel's dad?
Joseph.
Joseph? Yeah. Whatever happened to Joseph?
We don't know. So it does seem to be mostly suggested that Albedo is burying the bodies of the monsters pretending to be people.
Because they like devoured them or something, right?
Yeah, they digest the bodies in order to like properly take on the appearance of the person, which I'm like, ooh.
There's too much eating going on in this quest.
I know.
Cannibalism is real in Mondstadt.
Now, are these all Whopper flowers, do you think? I don't remember what the monsters looked like when they were fighting them.
There were slimes and
there was all of
trolls.
them.
Yeah, and meta trolls and stuff like that.
Okay.
They just had like the purple kind of glow on them.
Yeah, purple, red,
Right.
like
Oh, yeah. Because Durin was like sending everyone after them, which is weird. Like, how can he control them? But
At this point, Albedo also confides in us that he did kill Subject 2 back during the Suspedo event, and that was the body that was buried in the third location on Dragonspine, but the monsters dug it up and they fed it back to Durin, which, great. Thanks, guys. And Durin absorbed Subject 2's knowledge, which is why these monsters seem to be so much more evolved and why the fake people are smarter and more aware because they have all this knowledge the Subject 2 had. We also find out that the Durin Kool-Aid can go dormant, quite like Mono, and that it can just pop up whenever Durin wants and he can take over. So that's terrifying. So we really don't know how many people in Mondstadt are affected because it could happen to you. To me, we'd never know. So their whole goal, we find out with the trial, was to put the imposter in a corner and to make it have to out itself and go crazy and cause this situation. So Paimon's concern becomes, well, what are you doing with these people? Because, like, you can't kill them. And Venti's like, don't worry, we're going to restrain them using the power of the wind, which, okay. Where is all this power coming from, Venti? I feel like you really didn't need the knights. You could have just done this on your own.
I know.
Until they can properly handle the people. I don't know if that means that they're going to be, like, putting handcuffs on them, putting them in jail until they chill out. And then we're also going to be using the wind currents to communicate with other knights who have the Animal Archon's blessing.
Very convenient.
Very convenient. Where was this? I don't know, the last 5 years.
The first time we fought Dvalin.
Yeah, the first time many, many moons ago, whatever, Venti. So then we head over to the front gate where Kaya is standing there. Now, Kaya does say something along the lines of, like, I hate being out here in the open, especially on a bridge. And I'm like, does he have bridge trauma that I don't know about? Like, I got questions on why Kaya... Also, like, cocky Kaya, who we know can handle things, being afraid of being out in the open and also being afraid of a bridge.
Did you think that maybe it's because for years people have used him to make ice bridges out to that little island and he's just traumatized?
Like, I am a bridge.
Yeah. He's probably drowned a few times with that.
I've definitely drowned him a handful of times.
Oh
Not on
my.
purpose. Not in a kinky way, Brandon. Unintentional drownings.
But wait, Krapus didn't die on a bridge, did he? I can't remember the
He died in, like, the
scene.
woods.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was like in a carriage. He had a posh death.
But whatever. So Kaya might have bridge trauma that we don't understand yet. Kaya starts to fight a monster. Diluc comes and helps him. They decide that they're going to work together. And then Diluc admits that he knew something was weird after the first trial, and that is why he rescinded his testimony. And Kaya's like, oh yeah, you figured something was weird because of the fake Hertha, right? And Diluc's like, no, it was because of you. You weren't nervous enough. And I was like, oh, brothers. Oh, what an older brother thing to say. So then we show up and ask if they need any help. And Kaya's like, don't worry, me and this civilian we're good. We're going to do this together. And Paimon's like, you mean the man who had your job before you? And Diluc's like, we don't need to talk about that. I was like, oh my God. So we then flash and we see Barbara and Rosaria healing people, in which case Barbara does mention to Rosaria that Jean had been planning this for a long time and that Jean had actually come to her and forewarned her to stay safe in the upcoming days because weird shit would be going on, which kind of proves that the church wasn't in the know and why Dahlia might not have known as well. I would like to mention at this moment too that we're mentioning a lot of characters' names, but the people that you see involved in this are Albedo, Kaya, Diluc, Jean, Mona Official, Barbara Bennett, Rosaria Amber, Mika Swan, Note, Sucrose, Venti, Hertha, Eula, Vile, Diona, Lisa, and Razor, and a few other NPCs that I 100% missed.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people involved. We're not going to talk about what all of them are doing, but these are just like the important highlights.
Just having their little fight scenes.
Yes. We then hear through the speakers in our ears, apparently, or the wind speakers. We're talking about Amber and Mika, in which Mika's like, oh my God, like Albedo, I hope you're okay. I'm so sorry I wasn't here to support you. Because we know Mika loves Albedo because he helps him with equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
In which case, Amber's like, yo, yeah, I had no idea what was even happening. And Albedo's like, oh, Eula didn't tell you? I'm so impressed by her. I'm like, oh, girlfriends. Then in the wind in our ears, we also find out through Jean that Hertha went missing like 6 months ago. And basically, they made Hertha go away. And it was Kaya's idea. Kaya was like, we need to have someone who is well known, but not high profile. Go MIA, create a slot in our rankings, which I'm like, Kaya, again, people listening to you, not your brother, but people. And he was like, if we do that, we'll create this opening for an imposter to show up, and then we just have to suss them out. And it basically took them 6 months to build trust up with the fake Hertha before they felt comfortable enough to do this. They also, later on, we find out through note that Jean told him that Hertha was going away and that it was better off if people thought Hertha was dead. And that 2 days after Hertha left for this mission, the new fake Hertha showed up. And Note was like, man, I totally would have fell for it if I hadn't had that heads up by Jean.
Right. Sneaky.
Very sneaky. Hertha was in the loop. They all were in the loop. Like I said, 6 months in the making, which is just wild. Like, you think about, was I in Mondstadt within the last 6 months? Probably. What was I seeing? And we also find out that this whole time the monsters have been searching for Hertha's body because they want to make sure that they're good, basically. And Paimon, or Traveler, is like, wait. But how did they know to send this imposter in? And they're like, oh, there's an imposter among our ranks and we don't know who it is. And we start to panic because we're like, we're the wind. Can't they hear us? And like, no, because that person does not have Barbados' blessing, basically. Like, Barbados has removed the blessing from that person because they're just in the Kool-Aid mode. They're not dead and replaced.
Right. They're brainwashed, but they're not.
Yeah. So I guess like it's a temporary loss of the blessing, which like, thank God you're not on the Marge of R at that point, but whatever. So then they also mentioned that the situation was very hard on Albedo because he was kind of stuck in a situation of, I either reveal my true identity to the public or I just become a murderer in the eyes of the public. And he purposely left the letters and maps around so that we would see them because he knew we would come back for Windbloom. We start to run into some other people. We find out that Diona is hosting people at the Cat's Tail as a safe place. We also find out that Eula is supposed to be in charge of Klee, but has lost Klee. Albedo's like, don't worry, she can hold her own. Klee ends up showing up while we're fighting a monster, and Albedo now puts Klee in charge of saving Eula's life, in which Eula immediately has all of her pride, but then she kind of realizes that, like, the truth is too big for her little ears to hear, and that she should just go along with it.
Right.
Eventually, all this fighting is done, and we gather in the center of the city. Eula immediately is like, where's Amber? And Amber's like, present! And I'm like, oh, girlfriends. Meanwhile, Klee is like, don't worry, guys. I protected Eula.
Yeah.
So Jean kind of tells them all that they can leave. Venti shows up, and that leaves us, Albedo, Venti, and Jean in the town square, where Albedo is like, yeah, like, Durin knows a lot now, and he knows that he's not the only kid that Gold has.
Yeah, this part was really interesting to me. So Venti says he hears a child's anger on the wind, and Albedo, like you were saying, is like, oh yeah, that's like Durin becoming, he's aware, basically. So he's suddenly aware that he's no longer Gold's only child and is jealous. And like his jealousy is causing all his energies to become agitated and want to attack everything, right?
And kill me. Another assassination attempt on my life.
And I think that's cool because it's consistent with like Durin. If you remember back, like when I think that was our Dragonspine episode, we talk about the Durin lore describing his thoughts as childlike when he's slaughtering all of Mondstadt.
Yeah.
It's like weird because he's like being really violent, but he thinks he's basically like playing or like looking for friends or whatever, which is similar to, you know, what we see in Simulaca with mini Durin. But at the same time, Durin seems to have like these weird, evil, abyssal instincts that are also causing all of these monsters to attack Mondstadt. But I wanted to clarify something. I'm not sure. I think y'all probably know this. But didn't Durin eat the original Sus Beto? And like, because doesn't the original Sus Beto, thinking back to that event, the Sus Beto event, isn't he like we know that Gold made Durin, Gold made the original Sus Beto, and then Gold made Albedo, or whatever the order is. And then doesn't Durin eat Sus Beto, and then his blood brings Sus Beto back to life eventually? And then Sus Beto uses a Whopper flower to create Sus Beto 2, like another Sus Beto. And then the plan was to just distract Traveler with the extra Sus Beto and then kill Albedo. So I just thought that was interesting to think about, because I never thought about why Sus Beto was originally in Durin's stomach, like in his corpse's stomach. But it would make sense to me that Durin ate him in a fit of jealousy. And now he's like slowly waking up because, his heart is very slowly regenerating. And suddenly he becomes aware of Albedo and is like, oh, hell no.
So I don't think he was swallowed in jealousy. I think that I'm pretty sure Gold saw the Sus Beto experiment as a failure and fed him.
Yeah, that's what I
to
thought.
Durin,
Oh,
which
okay.
is, honestly, I'd be pretty pissed if I got fed to my brother.
I'd be pretty pissed if I found out that my brother was fed to me.
Yeah, like,
both
Gold,
sides.
I just don't get her, man.
I don't get Durin though either, because if he's all childlike, but then he's like waking up and sending all these monsters in to slaughter Mondstadt because he's jealous of Albedo, basically. Like, it's just interesting that he is, like, I guess, childlike when he was first created, but then also evil.
Yeah, I think it's that idea that, like, when like a kid, like a 5-year-old finds out they're gonna have a sibling, right? And they're pissed. Like when they pranked my cousin once, she's an only child, but they pranked her once and told her that on April Fool's that her mom was pregnant. And she was like, I'm gonna hit the baby. And they're like, what? Calm down. So like, I was like, oh my God.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, she was like, fuck that kid. I'm the only one allowed.
I'm gonna punch that baby in the face.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was like, I'm gonna punch your stomach until the baby's gone. Like,
Wow.
it was wild. Like,
Now, have there been any missing animals reported?
no. She's become much calmer in age and is still an only child. But I think like a lot of times like kids get mad when they have siblings, and Durin is considered like talked about like he's 5. Even mini Durin is like maybe 7 in my head, like mentally. So just imagine a 5-year-old who is tainted by the abyss.
Right.
That's kind of what we're dealing with here. Imagine Klee, if Klee was tainted by the abyss, right? Now she's angry. Not only is she bombing you, but she's going to do everything she can to get her way. And in this situation, we kind of see like the only child for so long wanting to continue to be the only child. And has, 2 attempted murders on Albedo, basically. Like, come on, guys.
I'm so curious about Durin's original relationship with Sus Beto. Like, even if Gold just fed Sus Beto to Durin, like, what was that like?
Well, Durin probably was like, oh, look at you, a failure. Another failure. Because it suggested that he ate many failures, which I'm like, where are the rest?
What if he was like, oh, I have a brother? And then Gold was like, eat him.
He was like, yes, mother. Well, I wonder if that could also cause the trauma of like, well, I'm only supposed to be an only child.
Yeah.
Now that there's another one, mother must not know. One escaped.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I'm so curious about old school Durin's thought process.
Murder. And I just imagine it being like, murder. Murder.
Murder is fun.
So after this fun little like Albedo kind of calmly having an existential crisis about the second murder attempt on his life, in comes Fonya, who is the angry child on the wind. And she's like, hey guys, yeah, I have nothing to report. Everything was fine. And Jean is like, how come you came from this area? That's where we were originally supposed to meet. Didn't you get the memo over the wind of the change in location meeting? And then Albedo's like, yeah, actually, a lot of our plans changed. Did you get any of those notifications through the wind?
And Phonia's like, there was a lot of static.
Which I'm like, this isn't a fucking cell phone, bitch. You didn't go through a tunnel. And then she literally just like screams and tries to run away.
I mean, you're like in a corner. What are you going to do?
Also, angry child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scream, run.
Yeah.
And she tries to run, and she is stopped by the knights. And Albedo, as they kind of drag her away, is like, "Don't worry, I'll help you." And we'll talk a little bit more about Fonya and after the quest. But we go inside, and Albedo tells everyone that Venti's helping him call a tripartite conference, which is a meeting between the Animal Archon, a representative of the Knights of Favonius, and the Hexen Circle. So Venti goes to call the Hexen Circle, but calls Varka. How did you make that mistake, Venti?
Yeah. Drunk. He drunk dialed him.
Or did Varka answer the phone from Alice's bed?
No, he says he's in the middle of battle, Brandon.
What kind of battle?
Oh my god. So anyway, Varka is about to tell everyone where his secret stash is when Venti hangs up. Paimon is unhappy. And we call and we get in touch with Alice. And Albedo's like, "Hey, Aunt Alice." And she's like, "Oh, you guys need a favor? This will be good." So she shows up as a Dodoko, because why would she show you her human form?
Mm-hmm.
I know.
And she's like, "All right, we could do this. This sounds fun." And Albedo's like, "All right, I need a moment before we go down. By the way, can you go to my office quick?" And I'm like, "Albedo."
You're like, again?
I'm like, "What do you want to do in the office, Albedo?" But then we show up and there's Mini Durin. And Mini Durin is like super hyped to see us, says that he actually was helping out. They tried to tap Paimon's shoulder, but she was too quick and he missed. And he's like, "Yeah, Albedo's gonna make me human." And we're like, "Oh, do you want that? Like, you're not being coerced, are you?" And he's like, No, I want this." And then they're like, "Does Hat Guy know?" And he's like, Hat Guy didn't really say much, but I'm pretty sure he's cool with this.
He just said, "Get a move on."
Yeah.
I would bet that Wanderer is jealous because it feels like Durin's like such a true way for like Mini Durin to redeem himself. Because if you remember back in the Simulanka event, they had such a parallel going on story-wise where Wanderer was really helping Mini Durin like reach some kind of redemption or understanding with the people around him.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could, like, if you just look at that dialogue, it's obvious that Wanderer feels the same way of like, you're just misunderstood. You just want people to like you. You've accidentally hurt people, but you're trying to do better, blah, blah, blah. And so I would imagine, because you know how bratty Wanderer is, he's probably like, ugh, should have been me. I should have turned human.
Where's my redemption, damn it? I'm just stuck here with Nahida.
In my puppet joints.
Which don't hurt, at least. Like, bitch, my knee hurts. At least that'll never happen to you. But we say goodbye to Durin, who basically is like, "Yeah, I'm going to become human. And I'm going to balance the powers of evil Durin with myself." And we're like, okay.
Yeah, because he's like, which I'm like, that's quite a gamble of like, we're going to hope that like I have enough purity within me to counteract all of Durin's evil instincts.
And then Albedo's going to be able to do it without turning me into goop.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, he really could have just become goop.
Yeah, which was your favorite.
Yeah. Carl would have a friend.
Was his name Carl after all?
It's his fame. No, it's not.
Well,
It's not Carl. But I still just call him Carl.
Carl.
Was
Carl
it
the
Carter?
Goop. Carter.
Carter. Yeah.
So we say bye to Durin and we head to the Imaginarium scene where Alice has set up a chess set. She is still a Dodoko, mind you. So it's us and Venti and Albedo, Paimon, Alice. And Albedo's like, "So in order to do what I want to do, I'm going to need a few things from you guys." And Alice is like, "Lay it on me, nephew." And he's like, "I'm going to need the flesh of that monster from the Marge of R. I'm going to need a part of the embryo that my mother uses to make her monsters. And I also need..." Wait, what's the other thing? I thought there...
And I think that was it,
Oh.
wasn't it?
So it only needs two things. The flesh of the monster, the embryo, gross. And he's basically like, "So, Auntie, like, I want to kill the Durin on Dragonspine and recreate him as another life form." And Alice is like, "Oh, yes, I get what you mean. Interesting. Cool. You really are your mother's child." And he's like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And she's like, I love you both. Because that's just true auntie fashion. So she says, yeah, I'll give you those things, but you have to pass a Hex and Circle trial. And Paimon isn't allowed to go. Paimon is unhappy about this. So we get minimized, and us and Albedo get sent down into what is now the chess set boss battle. The first half of the battle is overseen by Alice, but the second half of the trial is overseen by Barbaloth, who is Mona's master. She talks a lot about seeing beyond what's right in front of your eyes. At this point, we finish the trial, and Barbaloth very quickly exits, but does make sure to mention that we should gloat to Mona about what we did in order to make Mona work harder.
What a bitch.
Yeah.
Now, what in the hell is the point of this trial? Like, why do we need to do a trial for Albedo to be given his ingredients?
Yeah, like we were kind of like a sidekick. It was kind of like, you can phone a friend so Traveler can come along.
I guess the only way I can rationalize it is like, just in case something went wrong and Albedo and us would have to fight Durin. Was that why we had to pass a trial?
I felt it was one of two things. It was either a proof of strength, as you just mentioned,
Mhm.
or it was just because they wanted some entertainment before things happened.
Yeah.
Both things can be true.
They made that shit up right on the spot.
Yeah, they're like, we might as well have some entertainment. They're like watching them on a TV screen in their apartment as like Varka's like taking a shower.
Yeah, literally.
Remember that chess set we made? What can we use that for?
We took it from Beidou and Ningguang, and we are now using it here.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, and Barbaloth also is like, Alice will make sure to tell the other mages what is going on. So she's like, she'll tell the rest of the Hexen Circle, and we win our trial, and we leave. We end up going to Dragonspine with Albedo, where he sucks up all of Durin's juices from his heart, while we stand guard.
Yummy.
Paimon asks a lot of questions that really like didn't matter as much in my head. Like, she's like, how do you see Durin? Do you see him as a brother? What, like, where, basically Paimon at one point is like, where do your loyalties lie?
Mhm.
And Albedo does say, he's like, I am first and foremost a knight, and that will always come first. Like, I am here for that. So we're like, okay, good luck.
I think it's good that they clarified that, because Albedo can act a little creepy sometimes. So
Hey,
I think, no, but you know what I
creepy.
mean? Like, just like his, like, you can't help but wonder, like, okay, is part of his loyalty going to be to gold and wanting to just create or master alchemy at some kind of expense?
Mhm.
Because he's not as emotional as most characters in the game. So it's easy to see him possibly being like so like scientific or logical or something at the expense of safety or ethics. So I kind of like that he's like, I'm a knight first, because it's sort of like Kaya, where, at some point or another, a lot of people have like questioned their loyalty to the knights.
Yes, that's true.
Like, I definitely feel a little safer hearing him say that. I know you were already feeling safe, but I feel a little safer.
Always comforted. So then we say goodbye to Albedo, and we skip ahead 2 days, and we attend the Windbloom Festival, in which case we find out that Venti is the star of Windbloom, which is hilarious because, like, he is Barbados. He decides that he's going to sing us a song, some fireworks start going off, and we're standing with Jean, and we see Albedo on the roof of a building, and he goes to create life. And I would like to assume that the singing and the fireworks are all meant to be a distraction for the magic shit show.
Yeah,
Like, beautiful.
I think so.
Whatever that Albedo creates, because the only people who really notice it are Timaeus and Sucrose. In which case, at the start of it, he says, I hereby exercise the prayer of formation. In which case, he does follow up with some other words. And after everything's done, Windbloom is over, we go and find Albedo. And he tells us that he's been successful. And we did see a glimpse at a naked human Durin, who we've now seen a full concept for. And while we're talking to him, he's like, when my mother like left me with Aunt Alice, she told me that I had to find the truth of the world, and I have been harping over what that has meant for so long. And I was like, me too, Albedo, me too. And he says, but I'm realizing that was just her way of telling me to get a life. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, like, I felt two different ways about that.
Hmm.
Because I'm like, okay, I guess that's a little poignant, but at the same time, you're like, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
You mean the truth of my world or not the world or just my being?
Right. Yeah.
I found it interesting because Albedo does go on this whole little mini tangent about what life is and what life means and how life is what we make of like the days and the nights. And he has like a whole poetic little thing.
Hmm.
Paimon says, you have a pretty unusual family. Like, do you see Dern as a brother now? And Albedo kind of laughs and he's like, yeah, I guess I get it from my mother. She's pretty unusual herself. Ever since devouring Nibarius. And we're like, what?
Yeah. Like, excuse me? Can you repeat that, please?
I've only been wondering what the heart of Nibarius is for years,
Yeah.
and now she ate it.
Yeah. Like, oh, it was a literal heart.
And so we're like, what is Nibarius? He's like, oh, the ruler of life. I was like, what?
And then he pulls out a key to the hibernation chamber of your
My mind was blown at that point. Like, I think I paused it and just sat there and went, what?
We're like, oh my God, like what is that? Your mom? And of course, like the whole like Shades video hadn't come out yet, so we hadn't seen how this was working. So we just were like, oh my God, this bitch is so crazy that she ate one of the shades of the primordial one.
Yeah.
Like was it a pizza slice?
Yeah.
Was it a stew? Like,
The interlude comes out with the God's Limit when we do learn more about the shades. We start kind of questioning what the actual devour means. Like, did she consume or was it like a mind devouring thing? But like it's her person, and we don't know if what we're looking at is Gold's original look or if it's Nibarius's original look. Like, did you just take a fork and knife and eat this bitch up, or did you just smooshies? I don't know.
Did you turn her into goop?
Yeah, did you turn it? Was she goop? Did you
And
swallow
sprinkle
the
it
goop?
on a chess piece?
did she need salt?
Do you think that the chess battle is tied into the third descender being chopped up in the Gnosis because they're chess pieces? That thought just struck me. Like, why chess?
It's definitely a possibility, but I also think that the game of chess a lot of times is used metaphorically to showcase life. And like, how many like chess, everything's a chess game. Think of
Oh yeah, that's
all those
true.
weird analogies. And then when Barbaloth comes in for the second half of the trial and is like, oh, things are more than what they seem. I kind of was like, oh, like things aren't just the black and white of a chessboard. Like, look at the magic that lies beneath.
You thought it was more poetic.
Yeah, I thought it was more poetic.
I started wondering if the Hexen Circle made the Archon. They made the chess pieces for the Archon keys.
It's definitely possible.
It's just interesting. Keep
The
an eye
Gnosis.
out for that.
The Archon keys. What the frick am I talking about?
I mean, we understood what you meant.
Yeah, the Gnosis.
That's basically what they are.
So, the whole quest ends with us talking to Venti, in which case we're like, I wonder what the wind bloom is going to be this year. And it's a Cecilia flower, according to Venti, which I found fun because Cecilia flowers are Albedo's level up material. And we also know that somewhere Diluc has a Cecilia garden. Now, there is a lot that went on here, and I think we did a pretty good job of, like, while we were going.
Oh, wait, there's one other thing that Venti does at the end. He gives the traveler a gift from the Hexen Circle,
Oh, yes.
which is the Wonderland Cosmosphere, which is the key to Meliastra Wonderland.
Which we don't get for, like, another 6 months. I'm just saying.
I completely forgot that happened until I was researching this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, I don't remember that. Okay.
Which, have we all entered the Wonderland?
I tried it, like one little thing in it, and I was like, I hate this.
I was definitely like that at first, but now I'm obsessed with Tornado Simulator.
Tornado Simulator is the best. It really is.
I feel like I need to watch other people play it at some point, and like where you can just like show me like the really fun ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the patience to go through it.
I'm the same as you, Brandon. The Tornado Simulator was definitely one that I was fine with on my own, but I really enjoyed a lot of them just because I was playing with fiends. Like it's
Right,
a
right.
friend's kind of thing too. Like,
Yeah.
or at least even if it wasn't like, he doesn't have to be your friend, but like if you had some kind of communication to the other people, like if you use the chats and stuff like that, I think
Mhm.
then it becomes a little bit more fun. Or else you're sometimes just kind of standing there like, what the frick am I doing?
Yeah.
I could see it being fun, like especially if it's sort of like what's that game called? Fall Guys,
Oh God.
something like that, where it's like little obstacle
Yeah,
courses or
little obstacles
something.
and stuff. Mm.
I could see that being fun. Or like I would also just have fun doing like combat challenges.
There are a few of those.
Yeah, I just didn't, it just wasn't immediately super easy to find, but I know that game mode is going to take a while to develop and like
Hmm.
get, enough users to like make engaging content. So I'm staying open-minded to it, but for right now, I'm
Yeah.
just like, I don't have the energy for this.
I will say for me, I made my little character in my Genshin OC net. So I'm just like living my best life trying to get the outfit pieces that make her look the most like she's supposed to.
Oh, that's fun.
So I'm just like la 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 la. Like when Tiff was doing a teapot tour like, in the server and she was Albedo and I changed to Nat and I was like, yes, living my best fantasies. So it's joyous for me. And then I love being a tornado. There's just something
Hmm.
about Tornado Simulator that is everything I could have ever dreamed of and more.
Well, you know what you need to make as you actually need to be the creator of to
Okay.
me is a space elevator.
Shut up. Oh my God. I have to figure out how to build worlds.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
maybe a world where you're collecting all the ingredients to make an antidote for anthrax.
Oh, I'm already doing that. But I want to go back to this quest. There are two things for me. Actually, there's a few things for me that are important here. And the first one I want to bring up is just some things that are brought up about Albedo that I thought were interesting because, we did an episode on Albedo a while ago, and so there's some new like characterizations of him that come out during this game. One is that people are generally shocked to find out that he's guilty because they find him well-mannered and kind. So I thought that was very foretelling of who he is in Mondstadt.
Mhm.
Eula says, and I quote, he's an alchemist, not a sadist. Jean says that Varka said Albedo is different from the rest of us, which might imply that Varka knows Albedo's true identity, but at that time Jean doesn't. They also note that he has excellent handwriting. It does seem that he knows the truth about Venti and that Venti knows the truth about him. And that he said, at the forefront of everything, I am a knight. So those are just some fun little Albedo tidbits to hold on to as we move forward. When it comes to Venti, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but when we first meet with Venti and Dahlia, he says a poem song because he's a bard. And the one line is, when no love remains for the songs to tell, the world becomes naught but an empty shell. Cruel is said fate, cruel it may be, were it not for a hero who could set us free. Now, in this situation, this doesn't really make any sense because this is after we're talking about Donna not loving Duluk anymore, and we don't really need a savior in that situation. I almost wondered if this poem is a foreshadowing of the traveler saving the world from the Saritsa, because we know that the Saritsa has lost the love of her people or lost the love for her people. We've talked about her possibly losing like a loved one or a lover or something like
Mhm.
that. We also know that Venti seems to have known us before. Could it be a foretelling of something to come? Venti does say some of these lines again at the end when he again sings a song in a poem. So I don't know. He then also says that there are always trials in life and a certain someone will overcome them, but that even the archons know not to tamper with fate. And after saying that, he guilts us into helping. So I don't know, again, is he trying to say something about us being otherworldly? Is this again saying that we might overcome the Saritsa? I don't know.
That's interesting. Or is it even like the primordial one or something? Like maybe it goes even bigger than Saritsa.
What if we're the primordial one? No, I'm joking.
It's also a nice poem because it also just fits the motif of Venti, because it's like about freedom
Yes, and a hero. He loves heroes. And then the last thing, I just want to talk about Fonya for a minute. So when I was doing this quest, Tiff hadn't done it yet. I knew Brandon had done it. And I saw Fonya and I immediately knew who she was, which is just like, how devoted are you to Mondstadt when you
I was
recognize an
gonna say that's how
NPC?
big of a Mondstadt nerd you are.
And I messaged Brandon, like in all capital letters, was like, Fonya, I know her. Isn't she the invasive fish lady? And for those of you who don't know, there was an event many moons ago where the main quest had something to do with like Dodoko Adventures, but the side quest of it was that someone had released an invasive fish species from Sumeru into Cider Lake, and they were trying to figure out what to do about it. And they do arrest the guy, and I think like, don't we have like the opportunity to like kill the guy or something? Like, I don't, or oh, we have the opportunity to arrest him or set him free.
Right, yeah. It's like one of those rare moments in the game where you can make a choice that actually is impacting to the game.
And we don't know anything about who this person is either, by the way, like, which is a random person, we think. But according to Fonya, this is a little bit about herself. She is 26 years old, single, currently lives in the third room on the third floor of the third building to the right of the city's gates. She has a roommate called Ematol, Ematol, who also happens to be my tenant, and the monthly rent is, I forget, it's not important. My hobby is sleeping. After work, I just go home and sleep. If it's too noisy, I'll have some wine to help me sleep. I don't remember what kind of wine I used to drink, but that's not important either. As long as it can get me drunk, it's good wine.
Wow, okay.
As for where I was born, how I spent my childhood, what my parents did before I was born, and all that, I suspect that such things are far less significant.
Now, when it was she saying this dialogue in that event with the fish?
I don't know if it was that or she's in an event afterwards. Basically, she's in like 100 events that have the word Dodoko in it, and it's very hard to tell the difference between them. So that's a little bit about her. And just so you guys know, her roommate is also her sister, who's also in the Knights. So Fonya, when we first meet her, she's an investigative team signals officer working for Albedo, as Brandon mentioned. And she tells us that she actually really looks up to Frederica, Jean's mother, and that she's really the reason she joined the Knights. So her being transferred to become an intelligence officer in the reorganized 7th Company that Frederica might become the captain of is so exciting for her. Like, that's her fucking idol, you know?
Yeah.
We also found out that she was the person who suggested War Games, which is that battle event that Brandon mentioned, where we are in leeway with the Millith and the Fontaine people and all the different armies. And she's very curious about it all because when she worked for Albedo, she did a lot of equipment testing, including war equipment. So she finds this all very intriguing. So there is an event, and again, I don't remember which event it is because there's so many different weird names for the things that she's involved in, where it's post this quest line that we just covered. And she basically recaps what happened after we saw her in the courtyard and the Knights took her away. She said that she was thrown into confinement and that she heard the fireworks going off, which we see with Windbloom, and then she heard like a faint pop. And then basically she felt like herself again. And that Albedo and Sucrose gave her a lot of potions that kind of helped her like get back to normal. And then Jean sent her on an extended vacation. But unfortunately, she doesn't feel like the extended vacation actually helped her. She still feels very on edge. And in a conversation that we have with Fonya and her sister, she says, looking back now, Durin's influence likely came into play during the 7th round of extreme cold environment gear testing. During the test, I came too close to its still dangerous remains, she referring to Durin, and when I returned, I felt sick and weak. I was on the verge of fainting while writing my report. Captain Albedo must have realized from reading my substandard report that I had been affected, and that's why he transferred me to the 7th Company to take part in the simulation once my condition had stabilized somewhat.
That's really cool. That's like such a nice touch. And I feel like they've been doing things like this recently so much more. Not just with the NPCs, but also with playable characters. But even like, I feel like some of the Nogcry stuff, I've been seeing more like inclusion of like little details that only lore nerds know.
Right.
Have you noticed that at all?
Yeah, and do you think like some of the anecdotes also add to that too?
Yes, definitely. But it's like really like one of the big things in Non-Cry is like Dory is there, and you start learning like most recently she was talking a lot about like her supplier, and like if you know her lore, you know that her supplier is Alice. But
Right.
she's not like really talking about like she's not like using Alice's name, but like if you know that, it's like rewarding to read it. You're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, she's talking about Alice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's like a just a mini example. There's also
That's a good
you can
point.
cut this because it's kind of it's spoilery, but it's like not a big deal. But there's a part at the end of the new thing where someone basically retells us the story that we all know of Elaine and
Oh.
Renee.
Really?
And I guess they're telling it as like a parable or something, but it's like they tell us the whole story. We're like, whoa, like
And you're like, is this Tales of Tavat?
yeah, exactly. And it's like in the Archon Quest.
That's
Oh, I can't
interesting.
wait.
They're
for
like, have you
that.
heard of the story of Elaine Guillotine? And you're like, what? Yes, I have. Thank you very much.
I'm like, I know too much about that bitch. Way too much. I've met him, kinda.
It's really interesting because I'm like, oh, this is gonna come into play later more, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, it comes probably into play because of Gold, too, because like they were all involved with Linus, who is a creation of Gold.
Yeah. Well, though you'll see, because I think it's like in the tone of it is almost like telling the story and then putting the question to like, what kinds of horrible things would you do to save the world because of, the crazy things that Renee did and how it like tore his friendship with Elaine apart.
Ooh.
So I think
Oh,
it was more like that, but it could
okay.
also be just because it deals with like abyss stuff too.
But I just want to say on a personal note with this event, like it was everything that I needed. I felt like everyone in Mondstadt is an excellent actor because they all fooled me. I was Boo Boo the Fool here. But also, the whole time I'm doing this, all I could think of is all the Genshin OC writers out there who were like, ooh, how does this come into play now? Because for
Right.
me, I was like, my Genshin OC Nat is dating Albedo, and both of her pseudo brothers, like her adopted brothers, are Diluc and Kaya. And so just imagine for a second that, and I guess Nat would kind of be in on it because she's in the Knights, but your boyfriend is on trial for murder. Your kind of playboy brother is his lawyer, and your like dark horse brother is testifying against him.
Yeah.
Like, and you're just sitting in the audience, like, I could kill everyone, I think, maybe. It's just so fun when things like this come out that are kind of deep, but then you look at the like little niche parts as a writer, and you're like, how would my character actually respond to this? God, so
She'd be
fun.
like, I hate Hertha.
Oh yeah. Especially if like for some reason they didn't keep her in the loop. I do think Nat would know because she is a knight.
Yeah,
But I
right.
was thinking like if she had no idea, like Jesus Christ.
She'd be every time she runs into Hertha from then on, she's gonna be like checking for that scar.
Yeah, she just shoulder checks her every time.
Yeah.
My fanfics aside, Kirara is not having it. She has been waiting weeks to deliver us mail. She's very unhappy because we kind of like forwarded our address by accident. It's a whole thing. So we do have a few questions this week, and our first question is from Alice, and they said, "I hope Kirara likes the tuna I brought. Thank you. She is less mad. That being said, what is your favorite weapon lore?"
Who wants to go? I can go first if you want. I said the Staff of the Scarlet Sands, and that's because it has so much mysterious lore about Nabu Malikata, the Three Moons, Sky Nails. It has like all of this crazy lore in it. That, of course, is basically King Desheret's weapon, slash, I guess, Cyno's the one who usually gets that right.
Yeah, it's his signature.
So it just had a lot of like mysterious lore about Deshret and the desert, but also the Moon Sisters and Skynails and possibly Nibelung and like bigger things that we're always talking about. So that one to me was like one of the most exciting, but I do want to give a shout out to two others. One is the flute, because I remember looking up that weapon very early on in my Genshin fandom, and that is what introduced me to the Wanderers Troop, which we actually have an episode on. If anyone listening doesn't know who that is, like that, it was an actual group of people with their own lore, and I remember learning about the Wanderers Troop and sort of that was one of the earlier, it's kind of like Viridescent Venerer, where that was one of the early entryways into like me realizing like how deep the lore goes and how expansive it is. So I just remember being really excited by that. And then the other one I would give a shout out to is Crimson Moon's Semblance, which is Arlecchino's weapon. That has a whole lot of intriguing like Crimson Dynasty Conrian lore in it. And for those who have played the brand new Nodcry release that just recently came out, you know that all now makes so much more sense. Because when you're reading it the first time, you're like, huh? So those are mine.
I also really like the Crimson Moon Semblance, the whole I'm excited to learn more about the whole. I mean, obviously the moon is a very big talking point now with where we're at in the story, but I'll be interested to see how the dynasty kind of leads into there and some of our assumptions of what we were able to put together based on what we knew about Arlecchino.
It's so good. They talk about the fireplace.
Yeah, the fireplace. But I think my favorite is the Primordial Jade Winged Spear, partly because it's also the first 5-star weapon that I got. I think I have a little attachment to it for that reason. But I like the lore side of it because it tells the story of Zhongli actually needing to make this weapon to defeat a Geo whale during the Archon War. And the idea that like he's throwing stones and like, you know, annihilating all this stuff, but he needed to make like he couldn't beat this one whale. And I think his name was Batu. You know, so he had to make this specific weapon for it to just get rid of this one enemy.
Wait, that's not Baish's husband, is it? Or is that?
I don't think it's Baish's husband because he comes back. I don't think he comes back from the dead when we beat him in Liyue. I think it's another one.
Okay, interesting. And interesting that it's another whale.
Yeah. Well, and the other one, which one? I can't remember his name now.
You mean Baish's husband?
Yeah. What's his name? Osial.
Osial, yes, thank you.
I blacked out on that. I was like, who?
Yeah.
Osial's the one that Zhongli pinned under the water, under that island. But I think it's interesting that there's a Geo whale and, you know, the narwhal.
Yeah. And the idea that, like, in my head, because I picture everything, I pictured, like, a stone whale floating around. So, like, an Ajdaha type whale, which also just tickled me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's cool.
But I like the stuff about the Archon War, just because it seems so distant. And I really feel like it's going to come back to be very important. I also think, I truly do believe that Zhongli and Venti know freaking everything.
For me, it's the Watasumi weapon series, which is Moon's Moon, the Akumaru, and the Wavebreaker's Fin. It's really the first time I've ever been interested in Inazuma lore, as sad as that sounds, because Inazuma has amazing lore. But these weapons were like the first time I ever got into it, and they tell a lot of the stories about Ayame and Moon and Aku, who all were around during the times of Urabashi coming to the surface and creating Watasumi, and them fighting the great Tengu warrior and all of that jazz, who's a blanket friend. And I just remember looking this up, I think when we were doing our Kokomi episode, and being shook. And just being like, oh my God, who are these people? Like, one of them disappeared. Are they still around? Like, ah. And I don't know. The lore really got me. I have a lot of questions still about it to this day.
It was like your pathway into Inazuma lore.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that was before we even ever had Beefy on for an episode, and Beefy's really like helped me get into Inazuma even more. So, well, thank you, Alice, for your question.
Thank you, Alice.
Thanks, Alice.
So our next question comes from Ash, and they said, how did the Tots get their nicknames? I'm assuming that this is that Brandon is Bee, as in the bug, not just the letter, not like Barbaloth. Amanda is Fiends, and Tiffany is Tiff.
I have slight lore behind. Most of the time, my full name is Tiffany, and I tend to like people calling me Tiffany just because I like my name, so I like the full thing. But when I was a kid, I was probably like 13 or so. Me and my friend were like just having, I don't know, like an existential crisis, I guess. We didn't understand. We were trying to figure out why, when you shorten Tiffany, you would put two F's, but when you shortened her name, which is Jennifer, you would just put one N. And we decided that we were too cool for that. So I was Tiff with one F and she was Jen with two N's. And I wish I've lost touch with her over the years because I was 13 and I'm old. So that was a really long time ago. I still wonder if she still writes Jen with two N's. I would love to know that. But it's so much that like my boss writes Tiff as TIF. So like when you know me, I'm cool with people calling me Tiff like when they know me, but when it's like a stranger, I'm kind of like, but you use my full name. Obviously, except for this, like, you know.
I will say my one college roommate was Jen, and she spelt it with two N's.
Oh, she did?
And that's why every time I meet a Jen now, I mess up their name. And they're always like, it's one N. And I'm like, okay.
That's
Whatever.
interesting. Yeah, I usually see one N Jens, the one N Jen. My nickname isn't that interesting, really, because it really did just start with me using the letter B. And I don't know, because like when I was a kid, like some people would call me Bran, but that so sometimes I would like, like sign an email or whatever with just Bran. But then I just started using the letter B. Like, so I guess it went from Brandon to Brand to B, the letter B. And then when I started using social media, I started using variations of like the BEE, just because there were easier ways to do that than just the letter B. So that just kind of stuck over the years.
Yeah, because I think when I met you, I only met you through like whatever your gaming name. Like I don't know if it was your Twitch name or your Discord name, but you had B in it. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if I knew your real name was Brandon for a very long time. Like
Yeah, and right now my Discord name is Bee's Company. And that's a play for anyone who doesn't know, because this is a really old reference. I didn't even watch the show. I'm not quite this old. I'm almost that old. I'm not quite that old, but there's a comedy that used to be on, was it in the 70s or the 80s? I forget, but it was called Three's Company.
Well, I've seen Three's Company.
I think it's iconic.
but you weren't watching it when it was airing, is what I mean.
I don't think any of us were watching
fine. Touche.
Yeah.
But so I did a play on that when I created that handle Bee's Company. And I just thought that was funny for social media, because it's like my company. Like the people that are keeping me company on the computer is Bee's Company.
Okay, I like that.
So some people also call me Bees with an S, and I'm fine with that too.
So my last name is Feeney, which I think a lot of people know already, so I'm fine with doxing a little bit. My last name is Feeney, and like in high school, and like late middle school, I'd always get like the Mr. Feeney references. And no one called me Amanda. Everybody called me Feeney. And then at some point, one of my friends started calling me Feenster, and I kind of just like ran with it. Like my iPhone is called Feenster. So like ever since I've had an iPhone, you've been able to airdrop to Feenster. And I just kind of went with it. And then when I was like getting into like gaming and stuff, I was like, I don't know. I never was the biggest fan of the name Amanda, because it was honestly my parents' third choice at a name for me. And I know that for a fact. They've told me the story. I was originally supposed to be an Elizabeth and then a Samantha, and there's lore on why those never fell through. But I became an Amanda, named after a cousin in Ohio that I've never met. And I never was a fan of it. I kind of thought it was boring. At one point in college, I tried to rebrand as Ro. It didn't work out.
Oh my God, Ro.
Yeah, I was all convinced my freshman year that was going to work. Newsflash, it didn't.
I now see. I bet if it was short for Rolanda, it would have worked.
Yeah, it would have. People would have.
That's another old show I know of. The Rolanda. Do you remember the Rolanda show? The talk
show?
That one
I don't know.
No, I don't remember that one.
It was like back in like the Jenny Jones days, like Jerry Springer, Jenny Jones.
Yeah.
There was one of those called Rolanda,
You know,
and
Jerry.
she would, you know how like those shows would put like little icons in the bottom left corner of the screen or whatever, like their little symbol or whatever. Hers was always shortened to Ro, and they would, and then eventually they started calling it the Ro Show.
Oh, I love that. So yeah, I started
So
going
that's where
Fiends.
you went wrong. I'm just
I
letting you
did. I 100% did. So I started going by Fiendster when I was gaming, and so I think my Discord name was Fiendster when I met everyone here, and it just like got shortened to Fiends, and all my friends call me Fiends. In fact, I went with Tiff and Vanessa, who's often on the podcast, and a few other friends, and one of my cousins to see a Broadway show over the summer. And Vanessa was like, Fiends, like, blah, blah, blah. And my cousin came up to me afterwards and she was like, people call you that too? I thought she was talking to me. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm not the only one who goes by Fiends. Got it. But it's also fun because I don't know if anyone actually knows how to spell Feeny because of that too. Because like Fiendster and Fiends are actually spelled differently than Feeny. Like it's kind of misleading. And so sometimes I'm always like, do they know how to spell Feeny? I don't know.
Well, I started calling you that before I even knew it was your real name.
Yeah, because it's just fun to like add the Y on things, right?
Yeah.
Like the Y and the S's.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my nickname. So thank you, Ash.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Ash.
Ash.
And our last question of the night comes from Elliot, and they said, what element and weapon do you think Jet would be if they ever made her playable?
I went with Pyro or Electro, and it was hard for me to choose the weapon type because part of me is like, oh, she's a Claymore because she's just gonna like obliterate everything. But then I thought like she could be a catalyst and use her hands because like, you know, in the second part of her quest, which I think we're going to do an episode on at some point this season. But doesn't she just like rip everyone to shreds with her hands or something? So I thought it'd be cool if she like had some kind of maniacal like outburst via a catalyst and like just ripped people apart with her with some gloves or something. And then, but I also think she would look really cool with the sword. So I had a really hard time with that.
I went Electro pole arm. I just totally feel like she screams Electro. She got like that independence and that like work ethic that a lot of Electro characters have, except for Lisa.
And she's crackly like an Electro character.
Yeah, and I just felt like she would be very quick on her feet, which you would need to be for a pole arm user.
Yeah.
I went with Hydro as my element, and mainly I went that way because I felt like she is a disruption of the desert, and what would be the antithesis of a desert would be water. So I feel like she could like rule kind of the sands with water, which is also kind of why I led toward Catalyst because I could really see her making the water do things for her, like do her bidding. But I did also I was between a Catalyst or a pole arm because I do feel like she would be quick with a pole arm and be a little fancy with it.
Do you think Ben would hold her weapon?
Oh, I love
Do you think
that.
she would do the Dory and just hold up Ben as he fought?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she was a catalyst, maybe Ben is the catalyst.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Like Ben just houses the catalyst.
But thank you, Elliot, for the
Thanks,
question.
Elliot.
Thanks, Elliot.
That is all the time we have for today, travelers. If you're interested in sending in a question to the Key Robber mail segment, or you want to let us know your thoughts on this episode or topics you'd like to see in the future, you can email us at talesoftavatpod@gmail.com. Additionally, travelers can follow us on Instagram, Tales of Tavat Pod, or on Twitter, Tales of Tavat. We're also on Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, all under the same things. You can also check us out on Ko-fi, where you can buy us a cup of coffee, or you can check out our merch store where we have sweatshirts, t-shirts, stickers, and galore. You can also feel free to make a donation to Tales of Tavat, where all funds go to keeping us up for our endless research nights, editing, and paying for things like our web hosting and editing software so we can continue to bring Tales of Tavat to you. Travelers can also feel free to rate us wherever you listen to your podcast to let people know that we are a fun Paimon time. Next time, we are going to be talking about the ever-anticipated episode all about the newest region as we discuss Not Cry So Far. So catch up on your Archon quest and get ready to dig in to some really existential lore.
To say the least, yes.
Until next time, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you then.
Bye, Surtha nerds.
No.